have challenges, but maybe none like you got right now.
Well, thanks for having me, TD. It's always good to be back in the talking about sports and some things like that. Wish we were talking about who was going to who won the state championships in high school basketball, who was the odds-on favorite for the spring sports to win state championships, and who's going to win the Final Four. But obviously, that's not the case, and it's I've participated in several meetings today where people look to the superintendent or the leadership or whatever for answers, and right now we have as many questions as anyone else, and the answers are few and far between because the unknown is right in front of us.
You have been knee-deep in this for many, many years, and I got to get to the question, and it was kind of a popular topic, to say the least, kind of swinging back and forth late. Will the state championships be held in basketball? Will they not be held? And then it seemed from outsider looking in that you guys as a group were kind of hanging on to the hope it would happen. I mean, was the belief really there that you were going to play these games all these weeks later?
Yeah, it was as fast of a development as I've seen. We go from 10:45 or so that morning, having the discussion about where to go, to 11:15. We can't do this, and David, Cecilia Robinson Woods, who's the superintendent at Millwood. She's the current president. I'm the vice president, and we're on the phone with David Jackson about it all, and then all of a sudden we've got a press conference, and I'm on my way to Oklahoma City. Thankful that I didn't find a highway patrolman along the way to get there in time to stand with David and Cecilia to announce what ended up being, at the time, I thought unbelievable. The idea that March Madness wouldn't happen, I considered that unbelievable. But as this thing continues, we realize some perspective now that probably we didn't have on that day, and this thing becomes stranger as it unfolds.
Did you sense that there were some people, and I don't know how many that would be, coaches, players, parents, whatever, that were holding on to the hope that, hey, I know we haven't played in a while, but guess what? Somebody's going to make an announcement in this next week that we're going to go down to the state house and finish, and get this taken care of at Fairgrounds Arena. Did you sense
I heard
that?
From coaches. Yeah, I heard from coaches. I heard from superintendents that really thought this would be over with quickly. And the whole thing that caused us to postpone was the Utah Jazz players and the contact they had with Del City.
Mm-hmm.
But as this continued to unfold, there was no rewind on it, and that was something that it was just eerie how this continued and progressed. And in fact, one of the coach from Kingfisher, he played high school basketball for me at Blackwell, and so he was calling me even as late as spring break,
mm-hmm.
Wanting to see my thoughts, and as things ramped up on the coast, I had to tell him, Jared, I don't see any way that's going to happen. And then we had to make the decision over about spring sports too, and I was shocked that the NCAA made the decisions that they made as quickly as they did,
mm-hmm.
and we privately sat around going, do they know something we don't? And maybe they did. I don't know, but it was certainly prophetic on the decisions that they made as this thing unfolded, and they could take the advantage of spring break to get their student athletes home where they could hunker down, for lack of a better way of putting it, and in a quarantine environment, and then begin online schooling.
Do you think, in retrospect, and we all have the perfect perspective in retrospect, but the instead of the term postponement was used, not cancellation, did that add to some of the confusion?
Oh, I'm sure it did, but I stood behind postponement because we didn't. When I went down there, I kind of sensed that maybe there was a glimmer of hope that this thing would die out. There was the thought process that as it warmed up, it would kind of push this back and make it go away and some things like that, until it just became very apparent that it wasn't practical to even consider anything other than canceling it. And in fact, I wrote on my monthly column. March got 2 columns this year, but I talked about the fact to our community that what we're living in right now will be in future history books.
Yeah,
and that's something that is. It's something when you take a step back and look at it from the outside looking in, it's like, you got nothing to do but say, wow.
Yeah, today's kids will be telling their kids, we lived through this, and I agree with you. There'll be a chapter in a history book somewhere along the line about what this happened to the United States. You made this point to me, and we talk all about here about the NCAA's decisions costing them money and this and that, but you guys took a big hit by not having these games played.
About $500,000, and our it was a significant blow to our budget, and I don't think there's anyone on that board that would place money over the safety of our kids and our fans. But there's some economics to this that we'll have to endure. But there's economics all over the world that will have to be endured too, because this is certainly, as I drive around and I look at restaurants that their parking lots are empty at noon, and the people that own those restaurants I'm friends with, and I just, my heart goes out to them and their staff that they've got to lay off and everything else, because there's a lot more to this than just state high school basketball tournament or March Madness.
We're so interested, and we should be, with today's youth. This is big. It's part of their development, education. And I asked you this before we went on the air, but is there any concern? And I'm having you put your Guthrie hat on, take it off, put your OSSAA hat on, take it off as we go along. But is there any concern along the way that this could reach into the start of the new school year?
Well, I think what I've been watching very carefully is the predictions from the CDC about when Oklahoma will peak. And that date keeps moving later. And that is a concern, as well as the fact that the number of cases hasn't grown a lot, but the number of ICU beds continues to grow that are needed. And when you look at that model, and as that gets later, and it's now, today it was April 22nd, I think 3 days ago or 2 days ago it was April 17th. Well, as you add days to that, then you have to add days to the end of this to flatten out that curve, to see when it's safe to turn on what we look to be the new normal life, and you don't want a second spike. somewhere down there because you turned it on too early.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, there's a lot of people a lot smarter than you and I that are going to be making that decision. But it is as we watch that day get later, it makes it more difficult to predict what the fall looks like. And I've got a class just like everybody, every school in the state. We've got a class of 2020 that obviously is there's slim to no chance that their graduation is going to be on the date that it's scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
Their prom is probably you can put that one to rest as far as when it's scheduled. And then what does that graduation look like? And those are things that just my heart goes out to this senior class of high school kids.
And of course, that 2020 class, to bring it back to athletics again, they had their seasons just completely removed, their senior seasons, in all their sports, so they won't have the ability to finish out in any way, either with a championship or whatever. But these are all part and parcel of the things that go on with what we're dealing with now, and I think we always have to say that this is bigger than any other thing that we could come up with.
There's no doubt. I knew when I drove back to Guthrie from that press conference that we probably weren't going to play a state basketball championship, but you try to be a glass half full kind of person and think, let's give this a chance and let's see what happens. But as things continue to unravel, it's just not. I said from the start, I feel like I walk out my front door of the house and I'm suddenly transformed into a Stephen King movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we all feel uncomfortable, to say the least, and maybe anxiety-ridden because we don't know what's coming up here around the corner. Let's take it back to Guthrie now, and you're part of the entire state school system that has been mandated to basically shut your doors. Not that school is still not, it's going on, long-distance learning, but what kind of challenge does that come up for some schools where maybe some schools are not as capable as others of handling the long-distance part of it?
Well, every school district is different. I've been fortunate to work in 5 school districts now. Every one of them was different. But I can tell you here we have about 61% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. We have more kids that live outside of the city limits of Guthrie than live inside. Our school district is 232 square miles, some of which we have kids that don't even have cell coverage that's reliable.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, get everybody a hotspot and tell them to turn it on and we're just going to have school is not a realistic thing that's going to happen. And in fact, I've got 2 special ed teachers that I can't even get them a hotspot where they can do their paperwork from home. And their best solution is to go to the school and sit in their car with a laptop as they tag along to the Wi-Fi at the school because we can't let them in the school. So that and growing up in Stillwater and then 8 years as the athletic director there, Stillwater's quite different than what I just described with Guthrie, even though it's not very far from each other. Geographically, it's a long ways from each other in what the reality is for kids. And I'm a big believer that every kid is, regardless of their home life, deserves a chance to make their lives better than how they grew up. And so getting, but you can't do that with the situation that we've got right now. But here's the bright side of this. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't want to divulge any trade secrets about educators or anything like that to you, TD, but
you have on other occasions. I don't know why you wouldn't now.
But a lot of the learning has been completed. Mm-hmm. So we took the approach that we're going to focus on retaining that knowledge and then look at how we rebound and build that knowledge that maybe was missed in the last quarter of the year to start next year. And so then, you've got a couple of weeks that we've always taken a bunch of field trips and stuff like that. Well, we didn't have that time, and we've always had a couple of weeks where we were inundated with state testing. Well, we don't have that anymore, and so there's a lot of learning that's already happened, mm-hmm. And so then what gives me greatest pause we've already talked about, because I said at the start of next year we would go to build those skills that maybe they missed at the end of this year. Well, if the start of next year isn't when we need it to start, then we really are in a bad situation with the skills that we need to have our kids learn.
All right. Last thing, we can't have an interview without taking our listeners back to when Mike Simpson was a staunch manager, basketball manager. And I want to ask you, in these tough times, and certainly nobody could have predicted this kind of stuff, it's tragic stuff that we're going through now, but you draw upon some of those do better talks you got from Eddie Sutton, I know, back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I was so fortunate in my time at Oklahoma State to be exposed to some amazing people. Working for Coach Hamilton and Coach Sutton, Myron Roderick was the athletic director there for most of my time. Developed a deep friendship with him and his whole family. Tommy Chesbro, the family that was there, and then of course Coach Sutton, who really was a big accountability person and would let you do your job but hold you accountable. And if you didn't get your job done and you're the manager, hey, you're on the line and you're running suicides and while the players are laughing at you.
I was laughing at you too, so I might throw that in there.
But that was some of the best times of my life until I was fortunate enough to marry my bride and have our children and watch them. But those things, it's the Christian song, I Want to Go Back. Yeah, I'd love to right now.
Yeah, but you know what? It's like everything else. We'll get through this. We just kind of pull together, and we always have a way of getting that done. Hey, I appreciate you spending time with us. I know you have lots on your plate, even to this day. Who knows? You may have to do a virtual with the state superintendent, too. You might have to talk to her a bit about what's going on.
Once again.
Yeah, once again.
Thanks for having me, TD. It's always a pleasure.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Best of luck in your challenges, and we'll touch base with you off the air and see how things are going. But appreciate your time.
Sounds great.
All right, buddy. That's Mike Simpson, one of the good guys and a guy who's got a lot on his plate, to say the least. But at least, if you hadn't heard, the new president, as of July 1st, of the OSSAA. And they'll have their hands full, no question, with all this stuff still going on and future schedules and all those good things.